Today I have an old one called Nightmare Creatures, developed by Callisto Entertainment and published by Activision back in 1997 for the PS1, N64, and PC. Incidentally, that was also when I was born. I, too, have been referred to as a nightmare. Not in the edgy way, just in a difficult child way. A sequel to Nightmare Creatures, aptly named Nightmare Creatures 2, was released 3 years later, followed by the shutdown of Callisto. This game comes from a bygone era where you have to read the manual in order to know what you are doing. While I don't have a manual, they're easily found online, and by doing so, I learned the following. London is under siege by a once-renowned mad scientist turned necromancer by the name of Adam Crowley. He has unleashed a virus upon the city of London that turns all of its denizens into horrific nightmare creatures, and if left unchecked, will wreak havoc across the world in an attempt to force evolution of humanity into a more perfect form. I don't know about all that, because if these are what perfect humans look like, I'd rather have my dick grabbed and twisted. We play as one of two characters, Ignatius or Nadia. Ignatius is a priest with a staff capable of beating the word of God into any nightmarish monstrosity he may come across. They might not even have to be a monster, strictly speaking. Nadia is a biologist, gymnast, and fencer seeking to end the plague tormenting London. I mean, they're both seeking the same goal, but you can only choose one. I prefer Nadia because she looks cool. Ignatius looks kind of like a ghoul, which is cool if that's your thing. I guess he looks pretty cool, but I'd prefer having boobs over necrosis, but that's just me. Loading into the main menu shows 4 options. Start game, load game, enter password, and options. Start game does exactly what you'd expect. Load game also does exactly what you'd expect, loading you into the last place that you saved. However, you can only have one save slot, so I recommend having a piece of paper and a pen nearby, or multiple memory cards. Or just memorize that shit like a Chad. I'm not your dad. Reason being is because enter password takes you to a screen in which you must enter a password in order to load into its corresponding level, using the face buttons and directional buttons to form a password. It's incredibly archaic, but personally I think it's charming. I don't want it in the modern age, mind you, because it's not for everybody, but I like it. Options is just options. They're pretty self-explanatory. However, in the options lies the difficulty setting with only 2 options. How many times can a guy say options in less than 10 seconds? Like the video to find out. The difficulty settings are easy and hard, with the default setting being hard. It doesn't lie either. This game is fucking hard when you're first starting out. But if we swap the difficulty over to easy, the game will give you tips on how to play, such as general controls and weapon combos. More on that later. I chose to play on easy for 2 reasons. 1, yes, I am a little bitch. And 2, the difficulty doesn't change much. On hard, the enemies will block a little more often, they'll have a little more health, and they'll deal a little more damage. I don't feel like I'm missing out by not playing a slightly longer game. Right out the gate, I love the atmosphere of fighting assorted monsters in the collapsing city of London. I have such a hard-on for horror games from the PS1 era for their atmosphere. The limitation of the technology gives the graphics and the environments and the character models such a feeling of uncanny valley. The game doesn't strictly have to be horror either. You could just pick any game from the PS1 and there will be something freaky looking in there. Just because the technology wasn't quite there yet to make it not freaky, and I love it. Elmo's letter adventure is a nightmare.
I, Astro Grover, am about to explore a galaxy of letters!
Nightmare Creature starts us off immediately in combat, fighting for our lives in the face of true terror. A single zombie. The game's movement operates via tank controls, meaning that if you press up on the D-pad, you will move forward. Left will turn you left, and right will turn you right, relative to the character regardless of which direction the camera is facing. I will die on this hill that any game where camera angles are involved, tank controls are superior. Combat is surprisingly complex for the time as well. Remember that this is before established character action games like Devil May Cry or God of War. I'm fully aware that fighting games have existed for some time, but turning them into a full 3D character action game was relatively foreign. While only 2 buttons have attacks, being square for a weapon strike and X for feet, the manual gives us some basic combos to try out. Simply pressing either attack button 3 times will dish out a very basic combo that is perfectly capable of carrying us through the entire game, at least until the very end. For example, pressing square 3 times, then X followed by up plus X, Nadia will do a backflip kick combo, which is really cool. but nothing beats just kicking something backed up against a corner to death.
Smell it, now take it.
However, there may be moments where feet can't solve a problem. Maybe you're surrounded by multiple enemies. The lock-on system isn't very good in the face of multiple foes, as it will only focus on one, leaving a potentially unseen foe able to come up from off-screen somewhere and stick a finger up your beehole. You don't want that, unless you do, because you're a little freak like that. I'm not judging, but I am judging. Also, has anyone noticed that both the A-hole and the B-hole are the same hole? The same rings true for the C-hole, but only if C stands for cloaca.
What the hell are you talking about?
Anyway, the game provides various items to give the player an extra advantage. These items include, but are not limited to, a single-shot pistol capable of killing most enemies in one shot, a multi-shot pistol capable of killing every enemy in the room, healing orbs healing the player for either 25 or 100% of their health, Molotov cocktails for burning, dynamite for booming, and a saw blade that applies an attack buff capable of cutting off limbs with every attack. To swap items, hold the L2 button and press the left or right directional buttons to swap between items, and then press R2 to use the item displayed on the bottom right corner. Some enemies take more damage from other forms of attack. There are some combos that are capable of outright killing most, if not every single enemy in the game if you enter them correctly, or if the stars have aligned perfectly to allow the combo to work, because sometimes they just don't, for no reason at all other than a simple fuck you. The real reason is likely due to the frame rate making it difficult for the game to recognize that a combo has been pressed. There also just isn't much of a reason to use them on most enemies, at least on easy, since the name of the game is hitting the enemy and not letting them hit back, because the moment they have the chance to hit back, they can do the same to you, resulting in large portions of your health bar being eaten in a matter of seconds. It's like Bloodborne in that regard as well. I wonder how much inspiration, if any, Miyazaki took from Nightmare Creatures into Bloodborne. It's a little uncanny how similar they are, just 15 years apart. However, there's one mechanic that ruins all of it, and it's without a doubt the worst thing in the game. That's the adrenaline meter. On the left side of the screen exists a blue vial that, as you play through the game, will decrease. Killing enemies will replenish it completely. If the blue bar depletes entirely, the player will take damage at a rapid rate until they die. If the player dies in any circumstance, it will cost a life, where you will then get back up where you died with a few seconds of invulnerability. If you run out of lives, you're sent back to the main menu to load your save, where you'll start the level all over again. The adrenaline meter adds a timer to every level, and this leaves the player with no time to explore or to get used to the layout of any level, to collect items to be used in later levels, or simply take your time and enjoy the scenery. You must constantly be on the move searching for new enemies. The in-game reason for its existence is simple, but in my opinion doesn't justify how bad it is as a mechanic. The virus plaguing London is airborne, meaning that if you spend too much time sitting around, you too will become a nightmare creature. Apparently the reason for the adrenaline mechanic existing in the first place was due to a publisher coming in and telling the dev team that they were capable of completing the game in minutes by simply running past every enemy. It literally exists to artificially extend the length of the game. Does that excuse the mechanic? No, but now we understand why it's there from a practical viewpoint. They panic trying to fix a problem introduced by their publisher. Could you imagine if that stuck in today's climate? If Miyazaki put a timer in Dark Souls or Elden Ring because it was possible to run past 80% of the enemies in the game, it was just a solution to a problem that, in my opinion, didn't really exist. Most players will want to experience a game for what it has to offer. It's possible to run past just about every enemy in Dark Souls, but that doesn't make the game any easier. If anything, it actually makes the game harder because you still have to fight most bosses, and if you run by enemies, you don't collect any experience. The same rings true here, except instead of experience, items make fighting most of the more difficult enemies and bosses significantly easier. I can understand the developers for panicking and thinking their game would be too easy, but most players, again in my opinion, don't play a game just to beat it and call it a day. Those are speedrunners. But even then, they beat the game, and then they play it again and optimize their route so they can complete it faster. They keep playing the game. They should have had faith that the player base would want to interact with the game and explore its mechanics that clearly had a lot of effort and love put into them. The animations, for example, for a lot of the combos are beautifully done and look amazing. The sound effects and tense atmosphere truly create an unsettling experience. However, by implementing the adrenaline system, the type of stress that's created is entirely artificial. At that point, stress comes not out of fear of an unknown enemy or what may lie ahead, but from the thought of, if I don't find the next enemy, I'm going to die and lose a life. If I get lost, I won't be able to finish the level because the timer will kill me. Personally, I think it would have been a better idea to have the adrenaline meter as a challenge mode or something with a score peeper at the end of the level or something, as opposed to the default. I mean, we can't change it now, the game is nearly 30 years old. Maybe we'll get a remake someday with all the horror game remakes that they've been coming out with over these past few years. Or we could just play Bloodborne, that's honestly a good enough remake. But I guess it's cool to hate Bloodborne now. I don't understand people sometimes. There are 20 levels with a boss appearing every 5th level. A really cool detail throughout each level is that Adam, the necromancer, occasionally makes appearances. You'll see him appear from the darkness and run away while potentially throwing dynamite at you. Rude, but it also makes sense. We are trying to kill him after all. We're chasing this man down, hot on his heels in an attempt to save London and the rest of the world from his nightmare virus. And the game does a great job of making us feel like we're actually chasing him, pushing him back with each step like we're Mr. Bean chasing Adam through various locations of London, like from the Bank of England to the London Zoo. Another side tangent, zoo levels are some of the best levels, and we don't get enough of them. We've seen enough underwater levels and sewer levels. Let's get more zoo levels. There's one in Doom 2, there's one in Manhunt. I can't really think of any more off the top of my head. There's a lot of really cool things one could do with a zoo level, and we don't get enough of them. Break the cliche, guys. Make more zoo levels. The game has a total of 4 bosses, each of them being a gimmick boss of some kind. The sewer snake, the first of the 4, can only be damaged by hitting wooden beams until they break and then crack over its 5 heads, where it'll then start spinning around in the arena. It breathes fire, but only along the wooden beams, which looks intimidating, but with a little patience and observation, it can be done. The only real issue I take with it is the zombie. The arena will spawn a zombie in the boss's second phase, which just makes life slightly more annoying. It takes your attention away from the snake and artificially increases the difficulty of the fight. Even if it's not hard to deal with, the principle of just shitting out a basic dude without any real thought gives off an aura of unconfidence with the difficulty of your boss. The fight is already a gimmick that must be learned, but throwing Dave in here to muddy the waters doesn't make it any harder per se, just more annoying. The second boss is a Yeti that'll throw snowballs the size of Frosty's ass at you. Dodge them or die while collecting dynamite from 4 pillars in the arena. Throw them all literally anywhere and the ceiling will eventually collapse on the Yeti. The third boss is Jose Manuel, a giant knife-throwing zombie with a dapper-ass top hat. The gimmick is to hit 2 switches repeatedly until the spikes around the boss close in on him like an Iron Maiden while dodging the knives that he throws. The switches are on opposite sides of a pit of fire that occasionally spawns a zombie just to fuck with you. And the final boss is Adam Crowley himself. With his inability to kill the player and his lab now destroyed, Adam undergoes a monstrous transformation, becoming a giant gargoyle demon. He will sick his imps upon you that breathe trails of fire behind them and do a ton of damage. It feels like more damage than normal fire, but I could be delirious. I was on stream playing for 5 hours up to this point. Kill the imps and the man himself jumps down to fight. But this is where combos are key. Adam will block every single 3-button combo attack, but is vulnerable to any other button combination attack. In other words, he cannot be spammed into oblivion. He must be hit with combo attacks. Thankfully, he has no attacks that can penetrate the iron wall of the block button, so take your time, and when he's open, execute a basic, easy combo. Hit him with enough combos and he'll become delirious and dizzy. Hit him with one more combo and his head will fly off, killing him and putting an end to the nightmare. I enjoyed most of my experience. It would have been better without the adrenaline meter. The back and forth from the main menu in the game every time you run out of lives is a little annoying, but it's 1997. Some devs still haven't figured out that home console entertainment just doesn't cost a quarter every time you want to play. I don't have an issue with lives personally, it's just long load times. And with that, I don't really have a whole lot more to say about the game. It's a fairly simple gameplay loop of get to the end of the level while fighting enemies and trying not to die until the next boss fight, with some very nice varied scenery. Several dock levels, some back alleys, a zoo, a sewer. I like the snow level. There's nothing super infuriating about any of them, and they all serve as a pretty view from the start of the level to the end. If you're interested in eldritch horror themes or just want to experience what I call the proto-Bloodborne, I would recommend at least trying it. You don't have to like it, but if you do, leave a comment on this video and tell me about your experience with the game. If you have played the game before, let me know. My name is Box. Please like and subscribe and have a wonderful day.